It was just an ordinary afternoon. I was at home, folding laundry, sipping my coffee, when the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. A little confused, I walked over and opened the door. And there he was, a delivery guy holding the most stunning bouquet of red roses I'd ever seen. My heart instantly skipped a beat. Oh, Mark. What's this about? I thought, already feeling my face warm with a smile. You know, moments like this, they catch you off guard in the best way. Maybe it was an early anniversary surprise, or maybe Mark was just being thoughtful, reminding me how much he loved me. Either way, my chest filled with that warm, fluttery kind of excitement. After all these years together, surprises like this were rare. But when they happened, they meant everything. As I carried the bouquet inside, the sweet scent of fresh roses wrapped around me like a little cloud of happiness. My hands were actually trembling a bit, the good kind of trembling, as I reached for the tiny white envelope tucked between the flowers. My smile grew wider. This was it. That little note that would say something like, "I love you. You mean the world to me." I opened it, and that's when everything shattered. I read the words once, then twice, then a third time. No. No, no, no. This couldn't be right. The card didn't say my name. It didn't even say anything that made sense for me. Instead, it said, "I can't stop thinking about last night. Being with you feels like home. I love you, Camilla." Camilla. Who the hell is Camilla? My hands started shaking, but not in the sweet, nervous way from before. This was different. My heart dropped straight to my stomach. My mouth went dry. This wasn't a love note meant for me. This wasn't mine. My name wasn't even there. For a few seconds, I couldn't breathe. I couldn't even think straight. My brain scrambled, searching for some kind of logical explanation. A mistake. It had to be a mistake. Maybe it was delivered to the wrong house. Maybe anything but what it looked like. Clutching the card like it might somehow change if I just stared at it long enough, I rushed back to the door. I flipped over the delivery tag, practically begging for it to show a different name. But no. There it was. Clear as day. My name. My full name. My address. Perfectly correct. This wasn't the florist's mistake. Oh no. This was Mark's mistake. My husband, my partner, my supposed soulmate. And it wasn't just some careless slip-up. No. It was a full-blown confession, delivered straight to my doorstep, wrapped in roses. I stood there, gripping that card, feeling my world tilt sideways. My heart pounded in my ears, and this sickening wave of realization washed over me. Something deep inside whispered, "This changes everything." For a few seconds, I just stood there, frozen. My mind desperately tried to convince me that this wasn't real, that there had to be some explanation. Maybe the florist messed up. Maybe there was another Mark somewhere in the neighborhood, one who also happened to have a Camilla in his life. Right? Please, let that be it. But deep down, I already knew. I could feel it in my bones, in my gut. The kind of knowing that makes your stomach turn and your chest tighten like you're being crushed from the inside out. I looked down at the card again. The sender's name was right there. Clear. Bold. Mark. My Mark. My hands trembled as reality crashed over me like a tidal wave. He didn't just send flowers, he sent love. And not to me. Oh God, not to me. I scrambled, flipping the delivery label over one more time, praying, just praying, that I'd find something wrong. A misspelling, a wrong street number, anything. But there it was. My name, my full name, my address. Perfectly correct, perfectly intentional. My knees felt weak. I had to grip the edge of the counter just to steady myself. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like it might crack open my ribs. No, this wasn't some random mistake. This was Mark's mistake. His betrayal. His guilt. Delivered straight to me. It's strange, how something as beautiful as a bouquet of roses can suddenly look like a weapon. A cruel, twisted joke played by the person you trusted most in this world. I paced the kitchen, clutching that card like it was some kind of ticking time bomb. My mind was racing. Flashes of every late night, every unanswered text, every sudden business trip. They all started flooding back. Pieces that never quite fit before, now clicked together with terrifying clarity. I could feel my chest tighten, this suffocating mix of rage, humiliation, and heartbreak. How long? How long had this been going on right under my nose? How many lies? How many secrets? And worst of all, how did he become the kind of man who could do this to me? And just like that, the shock started to fade. Something else, something sharper, started to rise inside me. At first, I thought the pain would swallow me whole. I mean, how could it not? The man I built my life with, the man I trusted with every fiber of my being, had turned me into the punchline of some cruel, secret joke. But after the wave of heartbreak came something else. Something sharper. Something stronger. Anger. Not the reckless kind, no. This was different. It was cold. Focused. Precise. I wiped my tears, took a deep breath, and realized I wasn't going to be anyone's fool. Not now. Not ever again. If Mark thought he could betray me and get away with it, he had no idea who he was dealing with. I grabbed my laptop. My hands were still shaking, but this time, not from sadness. I started digging. Phone records, credit card statements, old receipts, every tiny breadcrumb he didn't think twice about. I hunted them all down, and let me tell you, it didn't take long. Dinner reservations I'd never heard of. Hotel bookings that made no sense. Little charges, flowers, chocolates, gifts that suddenly had a whole new meaning. I sat there watching the truth unfold in front of me like a sick movie, starring him. Every lie he ever told me now had a receipt to match. Every time he said, "I'm working late," or "It's just a guy's night out." Oh yeah. There it was, plain as day, sitting right there in the statements. He hadn't even bothered to hide it well. Because why would he? He thought I would never look. He thought I trusted him too much to ever question. And you know what? That realization hit me harder than anything else. He didn't just betray me. He underestimated me. That was his biggest mistake. I started taking pictures, screenshots, photos of the card, of the bouquet, of every single shred of evidence. I made folders. I backed them up. Twice. I wasn't leaving any room for doubt. Not for him. Not for me. Not for anyone. Because this wasn't just betrayal. This wasn't just heartbreak. This was humiliation. A slap in the face from the very person who swore to protect my heart. And if he thought for a second that I was going to crumble quietly in some corner, oh no, he was about to learn exactly what happens when you push the wrong woman too far. In that moment, sitting there surrounded by receipts, screenshots, and broken promises, I made myself a vow. I would not be the victim in this story. I spent the entire day planning it. And not in anger, not in some wild, screaming meltdown. No. I was calm, focused, almost eerily calm. It's funny how clarity can hit you the moment you stop begging for answers you already know. This wasn't going to be a fight. There would be no shouting, no tears, no pleading. No. This was going to be something far more memorable. I set the dining table perfectly, white linen, candles, his favorite wine breathing on the counter. The bouquet, his bouquet, sitting right in the center like a trophy. And the card? Oh, the card was framed. Yes, framed. Sitting right next to his wine glass, where he couldn't possibly miss it. When I heard his car pull up, my hands didn't even shake, not this time. I poured myself a glass of wine, sat down, crossed my legs, and waited. Calm. Composed. Ready. The door opened. I heard his usual, "Hey babe, I'm home." Like nothing had happened. Like the man who just walked through that door wasn't the same man who'd sent a love letter, in flower form, to another woman. He walked into the dining room, and the second his eyes landed on the table, I watched the color drain from his face. Completely. Gone. His smile fell so fast it was almost comical. His mouth opened, but no words came out. Just this little gasp, like the air had been sucked right out of his lungs. I tilted my head slightly, took a slow sip of my wine, and smiled. "I think these were meant for someone else," I said, my voice steady, almost sweet. "But thank you, because they helped me see everything I needed to." The silence that followed was delicious. He stuttered, fumbled, eyes darting from the card to me, back to the flowers, then back to me. Hands in his pockets, then out, then back in. He tried to speak, but all that came out were half-formed excuses, broken sentences, and this pathetic attempt at looking confused. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't even raise my voice. I just stood up, walked over to him, and with a steady breath said, "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to pack your things. And your next delivery? Yeah. It won't be coming here." I didn't wait for his reaction. I turned. Walked away. Because I was done. Done being blindsided. Done being disrespected. Done being the woman he thought would never leave. The days that followed, they were a whirlwind. You'd think I'd be drowning in sadness or curled up in bed, but no. Surprisingly, it felt like breathing again, like I'd been holding my breath for years and didn't even realize it. The very first thing I did, filed for divorce, no second guesses, no long conversations, just done. I blocked his number. Blocked Camilla's too. Yes, I found her number. And before Mark even had the chance to start spinning his little web of lies to family and friends, I beat him to it. I told everyone. I controlled the story. My story. And you know what? Watching him scramble, trying to do damage control while I stood there, calm and composed, was empowering. There was no sadness left for him. Only this burning desire to reclaim every single part of myself that I'd buried for the sake of that marriage. I threw myself into therapy, into healing, into rediscovering the version of me that existed long before I was ever Mark's wife. I started doing things I hadn't done in years, traveling, dancing, cooking meals that were just for me, no compromises, no, "What do you feel like eating, honey?" Just what I wanted. I began filling my home with things that made me happy. New furniture, new photos, new memories. Every corner of that house, the one that once felt suffocating, slowly transformed into a sanctuary. My sanctuary. My safe space. It wasn't about moving on to someone else. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about something way bigger. It was about me. About remembering that I was, and always had been, enough. A few months later, I was walking past this little flower shop downtown. I paused, watched as the florist arranged this stunning bouquet of roses in the window, and for a split second, I felt that familiar sting in my chest. But it was different now, softer. I smiled. Not because I was thinking about Mark. Not because I missed him, but because I realized something. Funny, the flowers that were supposed to break me actually set me free. I walked away that day feeling lighter than I had in years, stronger, wiser, and so proud of the woman who refused to let betrayal define her, and instead chose to let it liberate her.
That I was the one who signed their paychecks. Because what started as betrayal ended up transforming into a powerful movement, definitive. If you like stories of silent revenge and overwhelming success, click on the sign up button. Money can't buy peace, but it can buy the kind of revenge that makes silence count like gold. I learned this 3 weeks ago when my own family tried to sabotage my career without knowing they were targeting the employer's own CEO. I am Valen, but in the corporate world, many know me as Ein. I am officially the Director of Innovation at Skyvera Labs, an Austin-based climate technology company in Texas. What my family didn't know is that in the spring of this year, I became the discrete majority shareholder of Skyvera, using an investment arm with several layers that I started at the beginning of my 20s. It all started 16 years ago. I was a first-generation university student, coding late at night in a cramped dormitory at NYU, while pursuing a double degree in environmental sciences and computer engineering. Meanwhile, my older sister Jasmine dropped out of business school and jumped from one network marketing scheme to another. My father said, "You were always stable," but it didn't mean being supported. I worked as a waitress, built software prototypes from scratch, and participated in clandestine startup meetings that no one took seriously. Jasmine, meanwhile, went backpacking in Bali to reset her mentality, but I stayed focused and in silence, knew exactly where I was heading. By 32 years old, I had already launched and sold 3 green technology startups, each registered under a different LLC. I remained out of the spotlight, filtering profits through funds to build Skyvera in the shadows. But why so much secrecy? Because my family never believed in me. To them, appearances mattered more. They thought my work was cute, and bragged instead about Jasmine's new job selling bold solutions she barely understood. So I let them think I was struggling and needed them. Let's just say that illusion didn't last long. While they thought I was executing someone else's plan, I was executing my master plan, a silent acquisition of Skyvera Labs, the company I discreetly worked for just over 14 months. The company was undervalued but full of unexplored potential. With a careful network of blind trusts and offshore entities, I gained controlling interest without my name appearing anywhere. When the board promoted me to Director of Innovation, they thought they were appointing a brilliant, obedient strategist. Little did they know they were handing over the title to the new owner of the company. Jasmine's reaction was delicious. "It must be nice to have a stroke of luck," she commented at Sunday dinner with a smile. "Just don't let it get to your head. Managing a company is not like creating scientific apps in your apartment." Dad smiled tensely, and Mom, without missing a beat, added, "Maybe Jasmine can help you, give you some tips. She's already led sales teams in 3 companies." I nodded calmly, sipping my tea. "I'll definitely consider it," I replied with a smile. What they didn't know was that the acquisition agreement was already stored securely in my encrypted safe at home. But Jasmine couldn't stand being overshadowed. She spent the year being the star of the family, confident that I just had a good job. True, I was quiet, full of diplomas, but with little visibility. She started appearing at Skyvera just to have lunch with department heads, masking her visits as fraternal support. I watched from my side office as she laughed with the veterans. Some employees even casually suggested I was under too much pressure and still learning the ropes. Then the anonymous reports began. Complaints to HR questioning my qualifications, supposed fake credentials, and mysteriously missing courses. Everything was pure fiction, easy to deny, but the message was clear. "I'm just looking out for you," Jasmine purred when I confronted her. "You know how these companies love promoting women quickly. Quotas and everything," she leaned in as if sharing a secret. "I would hate to see you fall apart in front of everyone." I let her continue, curious to see how far she would go. The reply arrived yesterday, sent to the board, an elegant folder full of fake evidence. Falsified bank records, forged emails, fabricated schedules, accusations of embezzlement and insider trading. They called an emergency board meeting for Monday. Jasmine must have heard something from the sales team, because at dinner she was beaming. "The board wants me there tomorrow," she said, barely containing her excitement. "Looks like there's going to be a big change at the top." Mom clapped her hands. Dad raised his glass. Neither of them asked why I wasn't invited to this very important meeting about my own position. But what they didn't know was that I had spent all night preparing my own dossier. I documented every manipulation, every gossip campaign, every fake accusation Jasmine had tried to use against me. This time, I added something even more powerful, the full analysis of Skivera's ownership structure. Tomorrow, the board would find out who really runs the company. If you think Jasmine will escape this, click on the subscribe button, because what comes next changes everything. I should have felt betrayed, hurt, maybe even heartbroken, knowing my own sister tried to destroy my career, and that my parents, as always, couldn't see beyond Jasmine's charm. But honestly, sitting in my office surrounded by color-coded evidence, fake transactions, manipulated screenshots, whispered HR rumors, I knew this moment was coming. I had been prepared for years. Jasmine's clumsy coup attempt didn't shake me at all. If anything, it gave me the perfect stage. I had never before received such a clear opportunity to expose her lies and rewrite the narrative that had followed me. The council meeting was scheduled for 9 a.m. sharp. They thought I would be the only one on trial. They forgot something important. I was the one who wrote the rules. I arrived at Skyvera at 7:45 a.m., coffee in hand, watching the last pieces fall into place. At 8:45 a.m., Jasmine entered the lobby, wearing her best suit, accompanied by our parents, smiling as if attending a coronation. "The council is ready for us," she asked the receptionist, exhaling confidence. From my office on the second floor, I watched them being led toward the executive suite. The board directors arrived soon after, serious expressions on their faces. Each of them had received my message at midnight. At exactly 9 a.m., I stood up, adjusted my jacket, and walked down the hallway. The moment had arrived. If you've ever been underestimated, manipulated, or forced to dim your shine for the sake of peace, don't miss what happens next. Click on the subscribe button, because the real power move is just beginning. When I entered the room, Romero, the board chairman, was in the middle of a sentence. "These allegations against Miss Lynn are extremely serious." "Sorry, I'm late," I said, sliding into my seat at the head of the table, joyful. Jasmine stood up suddenly, confusion crossing her smug expression like static interference. "This is a closed session," she whispered. "You weren't invited." I clasped my hands together, smiling calmly. "Actually, I invited myself," I said with a smile. "After all, it's hard to run a board meeting without the owner of the company, don't you think?" The silence that followed was deafening. Jasmine's face drained of all color. Mom blinked rapidly, as if she misheard. Dad froze, his jaw tight, as if trying to swallow a laugh that never came. "What are you talking about?" Jasmine spat, almost out of breath. "Skyvera is a shareholder company." "Correct," I said, turning to my assistant, Mina, who stepped forward with an elegant leather briefcase. Skyvera Labs was publicly traded until 2 months ago when it was discreetly acquired by Verdun Corey Holdings, I said. "Would you like to guess who owns it?" Sighs echoed through the room as documents were passed hand to hand. The directors' eyes widened as they read through the acquisition papers. Some murmured about the mysterious fund with enough capital to privatize the company. Now they knew. "This is a joke," Jasmine stuttered. "You couldn't have done this. You're just a programmer." "Be quiet," I said with a practiced smile. "I've heard it all before. You've said it enough times." Turning to Mina, I nodded. "Would you, please?" Mina tapped her tablet, and the room was filled with calm but cutting audio recordings. Jasmine whispering things that should never have come from a true leader. "She is smart, but crumbles under pressure. Council will realize this soon. Recording you around the room. Honestly, he is only in this position because of quotas of diversity. If we are realistic, the temperature in the room looked plummet. No one moved suddenly. Narrative began to unravel for her, not for me. Did you notice any irregularity in the finances of the department? Worth it investigate more closely." The voice of Jasmine recorded another recording. Each whisper, every strategic manipulation, was there collapsing in front of your eyes. Every doubt planted now resounded in thumping sound like a fall. Perfectly orchestrated, but not. My Jasmine was visibly sinking into your chair, your posture confident, crumbling while the recordings echoed through the room meetings. Your once smug face turned pale. The directors remained real estate with expressions indecipherable. So I took an envelope, thick, the same as she had sent anonymously to the council. This one I started holding it in plain sight. Inside are falsified spreadsheets, manipulated emails, a fabricated case, built in desperate attempt to defamation, false allegations of misconduct, deliberate sabotage against leadership executive. My voice was steady. You really thought no one would check, not even one of these allegations before act? I was protecting the company. Jasmine stuttered, her voice embargoed. You're not qualified. It was always here extra. You don't deserve to beat me. I finished softly. Not Jasmine. I am who has earned the right to lead. And now I'm the one exposing you for manipulate internal perception, compromise the integrity of the board, and put the future of this company at risk. Mom finally spoke, her voice shaking. Surely you won't destroy life from your own sister because of this? Like if she hadn't tried to destroy the... I replied, turning to face her. You came here expecting to see me fall, wasn't it? Dad raised his hand in half, as if he wanted to intervene. We were just here to support Jasmine. No, I said, looking directly in his eyes. What are you doing? Always bet on the wrong daughter. So I turned to the council myself, getting up. I apologize for nature drama of this meeting, I said, leaving the calm take control of my voice. But I needed everyone to understand completely what's at stake. Senrita Jasmine Lin violated ethical boundaries and nice in their effort to remove me from my position. Paused, leaving the words resonate. She didn't just come behind me. She placed the future of this company in dangers. The company's reputation and its regulatory position are at stake. Ilis Romero cleared his throat and asked, Miss Lin, what are you? I would like the advice due. I sat down again, crossing hands calmly. First, I started, I request that the council reject formally all allegations against me, based on verified evidence and an internal review. Second, I ask for disciplinary action, immediate action against Senorita Lin for conduct. I paused briefly before continue. I also request that a letter formal form is sent to the employer of Jasmine. My voice was even, detailing the entire sum of conduct with the fabricated evidence, audio files, and their attempts at sabotage corporate. Your actions must follow it professionally. You cannot be seriously. Jasmine closed your thin voice and trembling. You will destroy my career, just like you tried to destroy. I answered mine calmly, but with firmness. The difference is that I have real evidence, true documents, recordings legitimate. You, on the other hand, falsified spreadsheets and evidence. I looked directly to the council and finally finished. I request that Jasmine Lin and our parents be permanently banned from property of Sky Vera Labs. Any contact with staff or interference in the company's operations will result in immediate legal escalation. Ava, please! Mom screamed, with tears running down her cheeks, smudging mascara. We are a family. I gave a short laugh, bitter and silent. Family celebrates their victories, I replied. Family supports you when you is down. Family doesn't try to pay your life's work out of jealousy. I slid a final folder across the desk conferences. This continued is the agreement acquiring my first startup of climate technology. I sold it for $50 million when I was 27 years. The second for 180 million years. Then I looked directly at Daddy. I could have bought that subscription from the country club you always wanted. Could have paid for all those luxurious vacations you gave Jasmine. Was always treated like the star golden. But I didn't do it. While they looked at the pages in a daze, as if the numbers crumbled each story they told themselves about who I was silent. And I started because I wanted to see who would be by my side when they thought I had nothing. I turned to Jasmine. You all failed. She looked pale. Are you ending my career? She whispered. I didn't answer. You ended up with her moment when you tried to sabotage my... Only difference is that you actually did the things you are being accused of. I collected my folders and got up. Meeting is officially closed, I declared, waving to Elias. Please make sure the registry is safe. So I turned to them. Jasmine, Mom, Dad. Security will escort them out. Wait, Jasmine called, with her voice choked up. When I got to the door, please, I was jealous. I wasn't. I could bear that you were finally gaining. Your voice trembled. We can fix this, no. We can still be a family. I turned one last time. You know what the difference between us, Jasmine. She raised her look at your last glassy eyes, remnants of pride disappearing. When you thought I was struggling, you pushed me still further down. When I was prospering, I remained silent just to don't you feel small. I exhaled. This is profoundly the difference between real success and the game you're in playing. The weeks that followed were revealing. Jasmine was fired quickly. Your employer did not lose time after reviewing the clips of audio and evidence documented. The news of my ownership in Skyvera Lab spread beyond the meeting room. Suddenly the same social circles, as once they loved my sister, they started to whisper my name instead of mine. Parents left messages. Jasmine started sending messages with a tone different. Handwritten letters, and even her therapist sent me one email ensuring that she was taking responsibility for their shares. I archived everything. 3 months later, while finishing a session strategy at night, Mina entered the room. Ava, is there someone here saying it's personal? But not ready polished Jasmine to the cameras that I've always known. She looked smaller in her designer clothes, had been replaced by a blouse simple, and says no jewelry flashy without the performative confidence. I won't be long, she said, raising my hand. I just needed to say one thing. She took a step forward and placed a manila envelope on my desk. This has everything without old contacts. Everything that I used while trying to sabotage you. I am also sending statements to the advice and for my old company without beating around the bush. Sorry, I was silent for a while. Moment. Why now? I asked finally. Because you were right, she replied gently. I wasn't building nothing. You were, and I hated you for that. She turned to leave, but stopped at door. I am restarting entry position in startups. No fake titles this time. I don't hope nothing from you. But letting myself fall taught me more than that every year that Mom and Dad passed me. Standing up, she reached out her hand to handle. Jasmine, I called gently. She turned, her eyes shining with a mix of hope and vulnerability. Send me your resume in a year, said calmly. Not for leadership, I added. But if you take it seriously, conquer your place the right way. We are always looking for people willing to start from scratch. A single tear ran down her face. Jasmine. She felt no excuses, no defenses, just a recognition silent. Then she turned and left without saying nothing more. 6 months later, Skibber Lab surpassed even my more ambitious projections. We are developing solutions, state-of-the-art climate systems, expanding to 3 new states and creating sustainable jobs in the Southwest. It is real and lasting. My mom and dad still send messages from time to time, usually when they want something or when are mentioned trying to stand out like the parents of the visionary daughter in social events that in the past they expected me not to participate. I maintain a civil but distant tone. The validation that I once so desired profoundly, it no longer matters. The corner office, they said, I would never conquer has a view amazing Austin skyline. Some nights I sit by the window watching the sun sets behind the hills, thinking about ambition of my family and in the present. Unexpected that was being underestimated. Last week I received a card Christmas. Without confessions, without requests for sorry. Just a simple message. Jasmine, you were unsuccessful for our sake, but despite us, I'm finally learning how to build something real. Maybe this is the purest form of revenge. It is not loud. It is not cruel, but it is deserved and undeniable. Thank you for listening to see what those closest to me don't got it. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever been underestimated? The one who remained silent, worked hard and waited for his moment? What would you have done in my place? Would have spoken? Would have stayed in silence? Would be gone? Share your thoughts in the comments. May this space be more than just a story. That is a reminder that the resilience does not need an audience. Only needs one purpose. She is smart, but crumbles under pressure. Council will realize this soon. Recording you around the room. Honestly, he's only in this position because of diversity quotas. The temperature in the room plummeted. No one moved. Suddenly, her narrative began to unravel, not mine. Did you notice any irregularities in the finances? worth investigating more closely. Jasmine's recorded whispers filled the room, each strategic manipulation laid bare. The doubts she planted echoed louder, collapsing perfectly but not by my hand. Jasmine visibly sank into her chair. Her posture crumbled as the recordings played. Your once smug face turned pale. Director stayed silent, unreadable. I pulled out a thick envelope, the kind she anonymously sent to the council. Inside, falsified spreadsheets, fake emails, fabricated allegations. I spoke calmly. You really thought no one would check? I was protecting the company. Jasmine stuttered, her voice cracking. You don't deserve it. You were always extra. I replied softly. I earned my place. And now I'm exposing you for manipulating internal perception and endangering this company's future. Mom broke the silence, voice shaking. Surely you won't destroy your own sister? I smiled bitterly. You came to watch me fall. Dad lifted his hand halfway, awkwardly. We're just here to support Jasmine. I looked him dead in the eyes. No, you always bet on the wrong daughter. Facing the council, I continued. I apologize for the drama, but I needed you to see what's at stake. Jasmine violated ethical boundaries, jeopardizing the company's integrity. I requested 3 things. Dismiss all allegations against me. Immediate disciplinary action against Jasmine. A formal letter to her employer detailing her misconduct. Jasmine gasped. You'll destroy my career. I stayed firm. You tried to destroy mine. I asked the council to ban Jasmine and my parents from Skyvera property. Mom sobbed, mascara running. We are family. I laughed dryly. Family celebrates victories. Family supports you when you're down. Family doesn't try to erase you out of jealousy. I slid another folder across the table. My first climate tech company sold for $50 million at 27. Second exit, $180 million. Looking at Dad, I said, I could have bought you that country club membership, paid for Jasmine's fancy vacations. But I didn't, because I wanted to see who stayed when they thought I had nothing. I turned to Jasmine. You all failed. She whispered, You're ending my career. I said nothing. She ended it herself the moment she betrayed me. I stood up. Meetings closed. Security will escort them out. At the door, Jasmine cried, Please, I was jealous. We can fix this, right? I turned one last time. The difference between us? When I struggled, you pushed me down. When I succeeded, I stayed silent not to make you feel small. Weeks passed. Jasmine was fired. Her reputation crumbled. Skyvera's success exploded. My parents tried reaching out, pretending pride. I stayed civil but distant. The validation I once craved no longer mattered. In my corner office, overlooking Austin's skyline, I often think, being underestimated was my greatest weapon. One Christmas, Jasmine sent a card. I failed you, but I'm finally learning to build something real. Maybe that's the purest revenge. Not loud, not cruel, just undeniable. Thank you for listening. Now tell me, have you ever been underestimated? What would you have done in my place? Share your story in the comments. Like, share, and subscribe, not just for my journey, but for yours too. Because success isn't about proving others wrong. It's about proving yourself right. What's your story? But I felt like I wasn't even in the room. Dad's voice, sharp and dismissive, cut through the noise like a knife. You are a nobody. Don't pretend you matter, he said, not even glancing in my direction. My brother, ever eager to twist the knife a little deeper, chuckled and added, Honestly, we forget you exist half the time. My hand tightened around my fork, the polished silver biting into my fingers. I looked around the table, faces I knew better than anyone, yet faces that had never truly seen me. I knew this moment would come someday. I just didn't expect it to hurt this much. I could feel the heat rising in my chest, the sting behind my eyes that always came right before the tears. But this time, I wasn't going to let them see it. This time, I wasn't the girl who needed their approval. I slowly lifted my fork and clinked it gently against my glass. The clear sound sliced through the air, drawing every eye in the room toward me. I stood up, heart pounding so hard it almost drowned out the murmurs of confusion. "This won't take long," I said, my voice steady, stronger than I thought possible. "Just 3 sentences." I paused, letting the silence stretch out, watching the smirks fade and confusion settle on their faces. I wasn't the weak girl they remembered. I wasn't the desperate for love daughter or sister anymore. I had spent too many years swallowing my pride, second-guessing my worth, begging for scraps of affection they had no intention of giving. As I stood there, memories flashed through my mind like cruel little movies. Every birthday they forgot. Every celebration where my name wasn't mentioned. Every achievement I made that was met with indifference or thinly veiled jealousy. I remembered being 10 years old, standing by the window with a handmade card in my hand, waiting for a father who promised he'd come. He never did. I remembered every tiny moment that built up the wall between us, one brick at a time, until now, when I finally stood on the other side, no longer needing them to climb over. I could feel their eyes on me now, waiting, puzzled, maybe a little annoyed. Good. Let them wonder. Let them sit in that discomfort for once. I had carried the weight of their rejection for so long that it had molded me, shaped me into someone far stronger than they could ever comprehend. Tonight wasn't about revenge, not the loud, screaming kind they would expect. It was about truth, about quietly reclaiming the pieces of myself they tried so hard to convince me didn't matter. The fork still trembled slightly between my fingers, but my voice didn't. 3 sentences. That's all I needed. I drew a slow breath, feeling years of hurt and hope swirl together inside me. This wasn't anger speaking. It was survival. It was freedom. It was finally stepping out of their shadows into my own light. I glanced around the room once more, taking in the shocked expressions, the sudden silence, the way my mother's wine glass froze halfway to her lips. Part of me wished I could capture this moment forever, the first time they truly realized I wasn't the same invisible ghost they'd grown comfortable ignoring. My first sentence was simple, but it carried the weight of years. "I have loved this family with every part of me that you decided wasn't good enough." The words fell heavy into the room, and for a moment no one moved. I watched as my father shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his eyes narrowing like he was trying to find a joke in it somewhere. There was none. Not tonight. Tonight, I wasn't the punchline. I let the silence settle again before speaking the second sentence, the one that cut sharper than anything else I could have said. "And after tonight, you will never have to pretend to remember I exist again." My mother's face went pale instantly, the color draining so fast it almost startled me. My brother's mouth opened, then closed again, as if he wanted to say something sarcastic but couldn't find the words. And for the first time in my life, I saw something in their eyes that I had never seen before: fear. Not because I had threatened them, not because I raised my voice or caused a scene, but because they realized they had lost something they never even bothered to value. I felt the strangest peace wash over me. No rage, no sorrow, just a quiet kind of acceptance that felt like stepping into fresh air after years locked in a suffocating room. I could have said more. God knows I had enough bottled-up speeches to last a lifetime. But I didn't owe them my pain, not anymore. I owed it to myself to move forward without dragging the weight of them behind me. Slowly, deliberately, I placed the fork down beside my plate and gave a small, almost polite smile. Not fake, not forced, just free. Without waiting for anyone to speak, I turned and walked away from the table. I didn't look back. Not when my mother called my name softly, almost pleadingly. Not when my father slammed his hand against the table hard enough to rattle the silverware. Not when my brother muttered something under his breath, too low for me to hear. I kept walking, each step feeling lighter than the last. And as I reached the door, I paused for just a second, long enough to say the third and final sentence, the one that sealed everything with a bow of quiet, irrevocable closure. Take care of yourselves, because you will never get another chance to take care of me. The door clicked shut behind me, and I knew without a single doubt that for the first time in my life I had truly chosen myself. The night air hit my face like a blessing. Crisp, cool, alive. I stood for a moment on the porch, letting the distant noise from inside fade into nothing. Funny how a house could be so full of noise and yet feel so completely empty at the same time. I didn't have a plan. I didn't have some grand strategy mapped out. All I knew was that I couldn't keep playing a role in their broken little play anymore. I wasn't their scapegoat. I wasn't their invisible daughter. I was something more. Something they didn't deserve to know anymore. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I didn't need to look to know it was them. Probably my mom, trying to smooth things over with hollow apologies that only served to make her feel better, not me. Or maybe my brother, ready with one of his half-hearted jokes, pretending it had all been a misunderstanding. I didn't even pull it out. I just slipped it into airplane mode and tucked it deeper into my jacket pocket. Silence. It felt like power now, not loneliness. I walked slowly down the steps, my shoes crunching lightly against the gravel driveway. I remembered being a kid, running down the same driveway with skinned knees and untied shoes, eager to catch up with my brother, eager to be part of whatever he was doing, even if it meant being teased or ignored. Just being included used to feel like a win. What a small life I had lived for so long without even realizing it. I reached my car, unlocked it, but didn't get in immediately. I stood there with the door open, just breathing, in and out, letting the cool night fill my lungs, letting the weight of 1,000 invisible expectations lift off my shoulders piece by piece. I thought about the time I graduated college and no one from my family came. The lame excuse about being too busy. I thought about the birthday parties they forgot, the milestones they downplayed, the way every family photo somehow managed to crop me halfway out of the frame. I thought about how many times I had convinced myself it didn't matter, that their love wasn't something I needed to measure my worth. And tonight, finally, I had stopped asking for crumbs at a table that was never set for me in the first place. A small, honest laugh escaped my lips. Not bitter, not angry, just relieved. I got into the car, started the engine, and watched the house shrink smaller and smaller in my rearview mirror. No tears blurred my vision. No regrets clawed at my chest. Only a wide open road ahead, and a heart that finally beat for itself. Tonight wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning. And somewhere deep inside, I knew they would remember this night for the rest of their lives. The night they realized the one person they thought would always come crawling back didn't. Days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into a strange, aching sort of quiet. At first, I thought maybe I'd feel the urge to reach out. Maybe some hollow sense of obligation would drag me back into their orbit. But nothing came. No phone calls. No half-hearted texts. Only silence. The kind of silence that spoke louder than any argument could. At first, it stung. Sitting alone in my small apartment on Sunday afternoons, when family dinners used to be mandatory, I would feel the ache, not for them, but for the idea of them. The idea that somewhere out there a version of my family existed where I was loved, seen, celebrated. That version had never been real, but grieving it still hurt. I filled my days with work, with small joys, with rebuilding the pieces of myself I hadn't even realized were missing. Little by little, I started noticing how much lighter I felt without their constant judgment pressing on my chest. How much more room there was to breathe without constantly trying to shrink myself into the version of me they might have approved of. Sometimes late at night, I'd scroll through old family photos. Birthdays, holidays, random Sunday afternoons. In nearly every picture, I could see it now, how I was always slightly apart. Always looking in, never quite fitting. Always the extra, never the star. How had I convinced myself for so long that it was normal? One night, after a long day at work, I sat by my window with a cup of tea, staring out into the city lights, and finally allowed myself to remember it all. Not with anger, but with clarity. The birthday party where my brother got a brand new car and I got a card. The Christmas when my gifts were an afterthought and my mom joked that I was hard to shop for because you're so distant. The college graduation where I searched the crowd for their faces and found only empty seats. Piece by piece, the memories rearranged themselves, no longer distorted by my desperate need to believe I had been loved equally. I hadn't been, and it wasn't my fault. I wasn't broken. I wasn't unlovable. I just loved people who couldn't love me back the way I deserved. The freedom that came with that realization was so sharp it almost hurt. It was like stepping out of a dense fog and seeing the sun for the first time. One evening, as I was organizing old files on my laptop, I stumbled across a document I had forgotten about, a letter I had written to my family a year ago, but never sent. It was raw and angry, filled with accusations and heartbreak. I read it now with a strange, detached curiosity. The person who had written that letter was still inside me, but she wasn't running the show anymore. I didn't need them to hear my side. I didn't need them to apologize or to understand or to change. Their silence was answer enough. Still, a part of me wanted closure. A final act. Not for them, but for myself. A way to mark the end of this chapter properly, quietly, dignified. I thought back to that dinner, the one where my father had sneered at me, where my brother's laughter had stung sharper than any slap. I remembered how they had stared, confused and amused, when I tapped my fork against a glass and asked for a moment of attention. I had said I needed just 3 sentences. They had only heard 2. It was time for the 3rd. The next morning, I woke up to a sky heavy with gray clouds, the kind that felt like they pressed down on you, making you move slower, think deeper. I didn't rush. I made my coffee, sat by the window, and watched the city breathe. Life went on outside, uncaring, untouchable. And for once, I felt the same way. It wasn't revenge I wanted. Not the kind where you scream and slam doors and demand apologies. It was something quieter. A line drawn in the sand, permanent and undeniable. A way to say, without shouting, you lost me. I opened my phone and scrolled to our old family group chat. It had been silent for months, apart from the occasional meme my brother sent that no one responded to. I stared at it for a long time. My thumb hovered over the keyboard, but no words came. They didn't deserve words. Instead, I clicked the small Leave Group button. It asked if I was sure. I was. The second it was done, a strange calm settled over me. There was no grand fanfare, no moment of cinematic closure. Just peace. A tiny, quiet liberation. But I wasn't finished yet. I found an old photo of me, one that had been taken years ago at a family barbecue. In it, I was sitting on the edge of the patio, half in shadow, half in sunlight. Forgotten, barely in the frame. I had saved it, not because it was a good memory, but because it reminded me of the truth. I uploaded it to my social media with a short caption. Sometimes the best thing you can do is stop sitting where you were never invited to be seen. No tagging, no names, just truth floating in the open, quiet but unmissable. Minutes after posting, my phone started buzzing. Messages from extended relatives, aunts and cousins I hadn't spoken to in months. Some asking if I was okay. Others just sending hearts or short, knowing responses like proud of you, or took me years to learn that too. Not a single message from my parents. Not one from my brother. And somehow, that made it even more perfect. The silence from them was more honest than any apology could have been. I spent the rest of the day doing things for myself. I took myself out to lunch, something I used to be too self-conscious to do alone. I bought a new book. I walked aimlessly through the city, letting the rhythm of my footsteps drown out the last, lingering ghosts of their voices in my head. At one point, as the sun started to set, I found myself standing on a bridge overlooking the river. The water moved slowly, endlessly, never looking back. Neither would I. It's strange how grief and freedom can coexist in the same breath. How you can mourn what you never had while celebrating the fact that you finally stopped chasing it. I leaned on the railing and let the wind whip through my hair, feeling lighter than I had in years. In that moment, I promised myself something. I would not let the people who had made me feel small dictate the size of my dreams anymore. I would not waste my life trying to earn love that should have been unconditional. And most of all, I would never again apologize for existing. The 3rd sentence I had promised at that dinner wasn't for them to hear. It was for me to live. It had taken me years to realize that some families aren't built on love, but on expectation and obligation. And it had taken me even longer to understand that walking away wasn't giving up. It was choosing myself. Finally, days turned into weeks and life moved on, beautifully indifferent to the weight I had shed. I found myself laughing more easily, sleeping more deeply. The heavy ache that had lived just beneath my ribs for years had loosened its grip, and in its place there was room to breathe, to dream, to exist without apology. I started taking small steps toward the life I had once thought was beyond me. I enrolled in classes I had long put off, ones that made my heart race with excitement. I decorated my tiny apartment with things that felt like me. Warm lights, messy art, books stacked in uneven towers. My world wasn't perfect, but it was mine finally and entirely. And yet, there were moments when the past tugged at me. Like a stubborn ghost, it whispered in my quieter hours. It reminded me of the girl I used to be, the one who sat quietly at family gatherings, shrinking into the corners, hoping someone would notice, would see. Sometimes I still wondered if they thought of me, if they regretted it. That answer came sooner than I expected. One rainy afternoon, as the city blurred behind streaks of water on my window, my phone buzzed. It was an unknown number, but something inside me knew. I stared at it for a long moment before answering, my voice steady. It was my mother. Her voice, once sharp and dismissive, now trembled at the edges. She danced around the reason she called, making awkward small talk, like a stranger trying to find her footing in a foreign land. I listened quietly, not giving her anything to latch onto. Finally, after minutes that felt like years, she sighed. "Your father's birthday is coming up," she said. He mentioned you. "We're having a little dinner. You should come." It would have been easy to think this was an olive branch, a small peace offering after years of hurt. But I wasn't naive anymore. I could hear the hollowness beneath her words, the way she phrased it like an obligation rather than a heartfelt wish. They didn't miss me. They missed the role I used to play. The quiet scapegoat, the emotional dumping ground, the invisible extra at their grand performance. I closed my eyes for a brief moment, letting the final pieces of clarity settle into place. "I won't be able to make it," I said softly. A beat of silence. "Oh," she replied, the disappointment naked in her tone. "Maybe next time." "There won't be a next time," I said, still calm, still kind, but with a firmness that even she couldn't miss. I ended the call before she could respond. I sat there for a long while afterward, feeling the final thread snap free. It didn't hurt the way I thought it would. It didn't feel like loss. It felt like freedom. Later that night, as the rain finally stopped and the city lit up in reflections on the wet streets, I thought about the version of me who had once begged for their love, who had twisted herself into shapes too small to be seen, too quiet to be heard. She was gone now. In her place stood someone who didn't need their validation, their approval, or their company to feel whole. I had given them everything once, my loyalty, my love, my forgiveness, and they had tossed it aside like it was nothing. Now I gave them nothing. Not anger, not hatred, just absence. And somehow that absence echoed louder than any words I could have ever spoken. Sometimes the greatest revenge isn't revenge at all. It's moving on so completely that their world keeps spinning, but without you in it. Weeks turned into months, and my absence from their lives became a presence of its own. The seat I used to occupy at family dinners stayed empty, year after year. My name became something they couldn't mention without a lingering pause, a flicker of discomfort in the room. I didn't have to witness it to know. It was the kind of truth that lived in the spaces people tried to fill with small talk and forced laughter. I built my own life, brick by steady brick, not out of spite, but out of love for myself. I poured energy into friendships that were real, where love was not a currency to be earned, but a language spoken freely. I found mentors who believed in me without condition, people who said, "You belong here," without a second thought. Career-wise, things blossomed in ways I had never dared to dream before. Every little victory, every promotion, every compliment, every late-night project that ended in success was a stone laid firmly in the road that led me away from them. And still the echoes came. One evening, just as I was closing my laptop after a long day, my phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. Another instinct inside me that already knew. This time it was my brother. There was no pretense in his voice. No small talk. No false warmth. He sounded tired. Not physically, but in that heavy, soul-deep way that only comes when the lies people tell themselves finally run out of air. "We were talking about you," he said, voice brittle. "It's weird not having you around. Mom, she cries sometimes." I let his words hang in the air between us. Let him sit in the discomfort he had helped build. I could hear him fidgeting with something, probably the hem of his sleeve like he used to when he was nervous as a kid. I guess what I'm trying to say is, I'm sorry, he mumbled. I didn't realize how much we were hurting you. I thought you were just dramatic. There it was. That word. The one they had weaponized against me my whole life to dismiss my feelings. Dramatic. I almost laughed, but instead I just breathed in deeply and let it go. I'm glad you're realizing it now, I said, my voice even. But I'm not coming back. He was silent for a long time. Even just to visit? He finally asked, like a child hoping for a miracle. No, I said. I'm not angry anymore. But I'm not that girl anymore either. Another silence. And then, in the softest voice I'd ever heard from him, we miss you. I didn't say it, but the truth wrapped itself around my heart like a gentle, final goodbye. You miss the idea of me. You miss the convenience of me. Not the real me. I ended the call with a polite goodbye and sat there, staring out my window as the city lights blinked against the dark. There was no triumph in it. No gloating. Just peace. I thought about the last time I had sat at their table, surrounded by laughter that had never truly included me. I thought about my father's cruel words, my brother's dismissive tone, my mother's averted eyes. I thought about the girl who clinked her fork against her glass and spoke 3 sentences that changed everything. And I smiled, not because they finally saw the empty space I left behind, but because, for the first time in my life, I no longer felt empty. I didn't need to punish them. Life had already done that. Because when you teach someone that your presence is disposable, you shouldn't be surprised when they learn to walk away and never look back. And I had learned, finally and beautifully, how to walk away without leaving a trail of anger behind me. Only silence, the loudest sound they would ever hear. Months later, on a chilly evening, I found myself sitting alone at a quiet cafe, a small place tucked away from the noisy streets, the kind of place where nobody knew my name, and that felt like a blessing. I stirred my coffee slowly, watching the steam rise and fade into the air, thinking about how far I had come from the person who once begged to be seen, to be heard, to be loved. The past no longer felt like chains pulling me under. It felt distant now, like an old story someone else had lived. It wasn't anger that filled my chest, it was gratitude. Gratitude that I had been forced to save myself. Gratitude that the people who broke me also set me free. I had no desire to reach back out. No curiosity about their holidays, their dinners, their milestones. I wished them well from a distance, so far that their hurtful words could never reach me again. One evening, I received a letter. It was from my mother. The handwriting was shaky, almost hesitant. She wrote about missing me, about regretting how they had treated me, about how time had taught her the value of things she once took for granted. She said she wished she could turn back the clock. She said she wished she had been braver, kinder, stronger. I folded the letter carefully and placed it back into the envelope. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I simply let it be what it was. A late apology written in a language that would never undo what had been done. Sometimes people are sorry only when they lose the version of you they took for granted. Sometimes their guilt is about their loss, not your pain. I didn't write back. Not out of spite. Not out of pride. But because I no longer needed to explain myself to people who had once told me I was invisible. I didn't need to prove anything. I had already proven it to the only person who ever mattered, myself. As I left the cafe that night, the cold air kissed my skin, and I pulled my jacket tighter around me. Every step I took felt lighter. Every breath felt deeper. There was no grand speech. No big confrontation. No dramatic ending. Just a quiet, powerful truth. Sometimes the most beautiful revenge is living well, loving yourself fiercely, and letting silence tell the story you no longer need to. And I finally was at peace.